In today's fashion shoot, we're going to photograph a dress made out of scraps of seamless paper. Hey everybody, Lindsay Adler here, and I shoot on seamless paper all the time for my fashion photography. But if you do the same, you know that sometimes it's a little bit heartbreaking when you have to cut the paper and throw it out. It seems so wasteful. And so in today's shoot, we are going to make use of some of that scrap seamless paper, and you can see that we made an incredible dress. Now I want to say, it's not we, it's actually my friend, Jen Daniels, and you can find her on Instagram at Before the Flash. Now, Jen is an artist, and so with all this scrap paper lying around, I'm like, I know she can do something incredible with this, and it exceeded my expectations. Now, if you don't have a Jen of your own, well, there are definitely things you can do that are more simple, but remember, especially with fashion photography, everything is about collaboration. I'm not doing the hair, and I'm not doing the makeup, and I'm not doing the modeling, so I find good people to help put beautiful things in front of my camera. So now you need to find your Jen, or maybe you are crafty and DIY, but just know what is possible, and you can make beautiful pieces out of nothing more than just scrap seamless paper. So let's take a look at what we are photographing today. So the beautiful dress that Saba is wearing is made out of 3 different pieces, 3 separate structures of soft gray Savage Universal seamless paper. There is the skirt, then she has a top, and then that neck piece. What's really great about how this was constructed is there's a lot of flexibility. So that neck piece collar, we can have it come off the shoulder, back around the head, and so I'll probably play around with that to give me a little bit more visual variety. So we have the soft gray of the piece that she's wearing, and by the way, this really was scraps. If you look carefully, you can see where there was, steps and footprints on it, but we kind of rubbed that out. And then the background is a Savage Universal fashion gray. My thought process here is what's interesting about this piece is it has a lot of texture and a beautiful shape. And so I am going to have the light a little bit off to the side so it rakes across and creates a little bit of sculpting on that piece. And then the shot doesn't, for me, benefit from a bright colored background or any visual distractions. So a fashion gray would be nice and clean and a little bit darker so the subject would pop out from the background. We're eventually going to build up to 2 lights, but let's start with our main light. I am using a ProPhoto D2 with an extra large umbrella with diffusion. So this will give me a big, soft light source. Let's take a look at what that first look is giving us for our subject. So you can see what I'm talking about. By moving the light off to the side of the frame, it's raking across the structure and it gives it depth and it makes it really, really beautiful. I like this so far, but I think that maybe the shadow side of the face is a little bit dark. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce a V-flat. In this instance, we're using the V-flat World V-flat. I'm going to bring it in. It's a white reflector, a big white V-flat. It's going to catch all that light and just lift the shadows a little bit so they aren't so dark and heavy. Can you bring in that V-flat for me? Great. All right, so I think that's a good amount of fill. You'll notice there's definitely still shadows and sculpting on the side of her face, but they aren't pure black. It just lifts them up a little bit. Now, this shot, the single light with a reflector, would be completely fine. I don't have to make any modifications. But looking at the dress, I think we could maybe mimic some of the textures and patterns onto the background. Because I've got all those lines and the shapes and the triangles, what we decided to do is add our second strobe, another ProPhoto D2, to the left-hand side of the frame. But we're using a Westcott optical spot. The optical spot allows you to project whatever patterns, any shapes that you want onto your subject or the background. Now we have swapped out the kit lens for a wider lens. So we are using a 24-70 lens. And in this lens, in this modifier, we are using the Searchlight Gobo. So Searchlight, it has all of these radiating triangular shapes. And so the idea is that we'll actually mimic some of the shapes that you're seeing on the piece. So let's add our second strobe. So we can turn the head on. All right, so you can see all those beautiful rays coming from the left-hand side of the frame. You can turn this down if you want it to be a little bit more subtle. You can defocus the lens if you want the lines to be a little bit softer on the edges, or I can focus it up if I want it to be really crisp. I could also choose to change my camera settings and shoot at a wider aperture and kick the background a little bit out of focus. Right now, I'm shooting at 1/200th of a second, f8, and ISO 400. I'm shooting at f8 because at this point, I don't need the background to be out of focus. I actually think it's interesting having a little bit of that sharpness there. So I'm gonna try a few shots here. I'm gonna try some with the background light on, maybe a few off, but overall, I'm not thinking anything to be full length or wide. All the interest to me is cropping from the knees up, or even tighter, getting close-up shots of her face and maybe with the texture of the paper around her. And so I'm going to play around with all those different compositions, which is why I'm shooting with the Canon R5 and the 24-105 lens, because it'll give me that flexibility. And I have all the different focal length range to be able to get different crops and compositions. All right, so let me play around a little bit with the compositions and the expression and the poses. And during that, I'm going to also have Jen help me out so we can try different positions of that collar and see if we can get even more variety out of this already beautiful piece. All right, so let's give it a try. Can you turn a little bit this way? Yeah, beautiful. All right, talk about DIY that looks expensive. Scraps of seamless paper making a beautiful dress. So hopefully this has gotten you a little bit inspired to think of the possibilities, and now it's time to go try this hands-on yourself, or maybe find the magic person to create a dress like this for you. Now, if you want to see the gear used in the making of these images, be sure to check out the links in the description below or visit adorama.com. Remember, the backgrounds that I used in this shot were a soft gray for the dress and a fashion gray for the background. If you've enjoyed this video, be sure to stay tuned for more, because I have many more of these coming your way. See you next time, guys.